Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. Last month, we got to spend some time with one of advertising's best-known digital minds, Malcolm Poynton. The Global Chief Creative Officer and President of Creative at Cheil Worldwide, Malcolm was in India to talk shop and to clue us in on the exploding popularity of Korean culture, the future of mobile, and more. So let's get ready to melt with Malcolm Poynton. Malcolm, assuming it's not top secret, what are you doing in India?
Absolutely, it's not top secret. I actually had the opportunity to come here and welcome our new Chief Creative Officer, Vikash Chamud, to our Cheil India agency, and at the same time have discussions with our team here about how we're continuing to evolve our capabilities at pace, as we always do, and for the launch of our live streaming and content studios here, which Studio Next, which is a quite big facility. And as we roll these facilities out around the world, it was really good to see this in action here. And it's probably our most sophisticated anywhere, actually, and the scale of it to afford us to take that leap into that space of constantly creating the content that we need to do and managing, in a way, all the production around live commerce as well. So a really exciting moment.
So give us a sense about how the studio is going to change the game for your clients.
Well, I think what we're seeing, globally with all of our clients and why we're rolling out our film studios across the world is because, of course, this whole D2C relationship is collapsing incredibly quickly because of mobile technology and mobile platforms. So the ability to be able to actually connect brands with consumer in a live and dynamic fashion that actually brings that transaction point right to the connection of content is super important. So that's really the model behind why it's so important, as well as, of course, the ongoing conversation that brands need to have with consumers today and the amount of content that needs producing for that. And who better than to do it than the agencies who are collaborating with the clients rather than going to yet another third party that then may or may not understand the nuance of the brand. So it's so much more effective for us to do that for our clients.
And are you meeting your clients as well when you're in India?
Yes, yeah, I had some very interesting meetings here and like all of us, it's been a little bit of a gap between the usual cycle of meetings. So it was good to reconnect and catch up with, I guess, what's changed here in the market, different to other markets over the last couple of years.
And what is your sense? What are clients asking for? They're asking for new things of Cheil?
Absolutely. I think to the point of reference I just made around our new Studio Next and these kinds of things, I think we're seeing leaps here. You've got UPI payments here that have emerged in very recent times.
5 billion of them a month. Yeah.
That's very different to other markets' payment systems. And how does that integrate into converting, kind of communication into sales? All of these things are very, very interesting and dynamic conversations right now.
Malcolm, you're a global CCO. Now, give me a sense of how does this role work? And let me put this question in context. To understand the nuances of any one country, any one region could take you an entire lifetime.
Yes, yeah.
So how do you straddle multiple countries, multiple cultures? Korea is dramatically different, and people say India changes every 100 kilometers, and the rest of the world, I'm sure, is as diverse as we are. So how does a global CCO actually work with different regions?
Well, I think from our point of view, this is very different to perhaps other traditional networks. So, traditional networks were typically built by replicating capability around the world. And really, it's a kind of very imperialist approach to how they operate. We're born differently. I mean, we were born with the digital era. And typically, we're very different in that we're specialized in different markets according to the market. So we never replicated our capability according to traditional media models. So for us, it means that it's very different for me from a global chief creative officer point of view. It's actually all about unlocking our collaboration of specialisms across the network to accelerate the progress of our creative product for our clients. And so it becomes a very iterative, I have a bi-weekly cycle with our creative leaders, and then global projects that we're working on in collaboration is happening all the while in between that. So it's really dynamic and it's a very active way of making progress through our actual projects rather than setting up some traditional kind of award show review board, which typically is how a traditional network comes at it. So what that means is that, yes, there's cultural nuance in markets, but actually there's cultural nuance attached to technology and touch points for consumers, which becomes super important. And that's why we bring all that together in a highly collaborative way, because it helps when something happens in one market to push another market forward, or something we're doing on one client can actually unlock new thinking for another client. And it's a very different way, very, very different, but we're not a traditional network. So that's how we benefit from it.
I imagine you spent a lot of time in South Korea as part of this role, and you're here in India after a stint in South Korea. Tell us a little bit about Korean culture. We see K-pop, we see K-drama, we see K-beauty.
Yeah.
The K word is everywhere. How did South Korea become a lodestone for millennials in Bangalore and in Mumbai?
Yeah, well, I have a predilection for kimchi, so I'd love to say it starts with that, but I'm sure that's a different answer. I think the reality is it's actually quite by design.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you deconstruct K-pop, pretty much every song has a number of musical genres in it, consciously to appeal to a broader audience.
And that's not an accident.
It's not an accident.
Designed like
it's
that?
by design, because the bands are typically made of a number of different personality types that appeal to a broader audience as well. And so what they tend to do is bring genres together that haven't typically been brought together. And I think the same is true in K-fashion. You know, you see they will bring together two fashion styles that the West would never mix, collide them in a way that creates a new twist on fashion. And this explains why you get, you know, Anna Wintour sending editors from Vogue to Korea all the time, because they just twist things in a way that the West wouldn't have done before.
So what can brands and marketers and maybe agencies learn from this? How do they design sort of cultural memes that become global sensations?
I think one of the secrets in this is the courage, the curiosity to be able to collide things together to create new things. And I think this applies in both technology and communications. And really, I mean, look, we're seeing this all the time in mobile platform innovations, aren't we? We're seeing, you know, what may have existed in one place before metamorphosize into something like a TikTok, something that, you know, builds upon what Snap was doing, colliding it with something else. We're seeing commerce come into the space to create yet a new experience. We're seeing, you know, experiences like Be Real evolve for the kids today, which is using front and back cameras simultaneously, something that Samsung had in their products a couple of years ago, and now it's become a social platform. So it's about colliding these things that we wouldn't normally put together. I think, you know, anywhere in the world we can learn from that.
And speaking of colliding things together, Cheil Worldwide is launching its own NFTs and a marketplace. Tell us why. Why are you foraying into this?
That's a really interesting topic, isn't it? Because there's so much hype around NFTs, typically around record prices for NFT artworks. And I think we've seen a lot of, you know, agencies and brands in the last 12 months with a healthy dose of FOMO, trying to make sure they catch the crypto kids with a bit of a stunt in the NFT world. But for us, it's very different. We have a whole business model around this, and we're partnering very deeply with leading Korean entertainment properties to create new formats and spin-offs of entertainment properties in the NFT platform. And so we have a whole different approach to this, and I think it's a much more interesting and far-reaching, again, colliding things that brings entertainment properties and something as progressive as NFTs together to create new formats, to put new entertainment in the hands of consumers.
This year at the Cannes Lion, you couldn't walk 10 feet without somebody throwing the word Metaverse or NFT or Avatar at you.
Right.
What's the big deal about the Metaverse, and what do marketers need to know that they don't know already?
It's interesting, isn't it, that, you know, I mean, when Neil Stephenson first coined the phrase Metaverse in his Snow Crash book in '92, it's a long time ago. And I think for us, we slightly smile at the term because we've been doing what we today call the Metaverse for so long, you know. I mean, in 1995, we launched a big project with Samsung called Re-Shakespeare that enabled students in Britain to tread the virtual boards of the Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company to rehearse face-to-face.
With 1996 technology?
In 1995 technology.
That's impressive.
Exactly. To interact face-to-face and rehearse with Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company actors. You know, in 1996, we were doing Be Fearless to destigmatize people from fear of heights or public speaking, and these things using virtual reality and avatars. And, you know, that's what Neil Stephenson wrote about, is human and avatar interaction through a 3D virtual world. So we used to call it multiverse, and we've been doing it a long time. And, you know, it exists also in places like entertainment. With Six Flags entertainment parks in North America, we created the 4D virtual roller coaster ride. So for us, it's a natural behavior. I think for the industry, it's a little like going back to the term digital. It could mean anything, and it will mean what we make it mean. I mean, the cases I've just spoken through from our point of view is how we have seen it bring, you know, real value to different situations, whether it's entertainment or education. And I think it's a very, very rich ground that we're yet to discover. But I think perhaps some of the hype around some of the bigger entities who believe that you need to have your Quest VR headset frames it in a way that limits it. And I think it's a much bigger conversation than that. But generally, the metaverse as a term, I think, is what we define it to be. I don't think it's any one thing.
Malcolm, tell us about 2 or 3 big trends that you're seeing in advertising right now. What do agencies need to take cognizance of? And more importantly, what do marketers need to take cognizance of?
Well, I think the trends probably are influenced a little bit by the hype, aren't they, that we have, whether it's NFTs or the hype cycle around it. But actually, if I were to ground it more in like an enduring, lasting trend, I would say one word: mobile. And I think that, we've moved from digital. We talk about Web 3.0. But actually, if we look at it through the lens of consumer behavior, it's a mobile world. And I think we have only scratched the surface of what that means from a marketing and brand connection point of view. Mm-hmm. So for me, the real trend, whether you're talking metaverse or whether you're talking live commerce or anything else, really centers around mobile.
And Cheil, of course, is a subsidiary of Samsung, the world's largest maker of mobiles. Give us a sense of how the physical device is going to transform in the years to come. Are we going to still hold a device in our pockets? Is it going to be embedded under our skins? What's going to happen to the mobile?
I mean, I'm not really at liberty to predict that because I'm not the person at the center of the innovation. I'm not so sure that we're going to see embedded technology as quickly as some people would predict. Mm-hmm. And I think there are some serious kind of moral questions around that.
Concerns there,
right? Do we want to be an augmented species with technology? I think there's ways of doing and achieving that without it being embedded in the human body, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I think most certainly what we're seeing is, going back to the world being more mobile-centered, is we're seeing that the technology that's emerging is allowing you anywhere, anytime, any place to achieve pretty much anything. And that's really the big shift. Previously, and still in some parts of the world, of course, it's small steps. I guess it's the expansiveness of what you'll be able to achieve whenever you wish, however you wish, through these mediums that we call mobile devices today. I mean, I think we've got to get past the term of mobile phone, don't we? They're a mobile device that do.
And it may not always be in the form of a phone, because
exactly.
Mobile devices are all around us with the Internet of Things and everything.
And the form factor is changing. Like, foldable phones is already changing the form factor. Flexible screens now exist. We can bend glass. We can do things. So we will see the form factor change dramatically, for sure.
Let's stay with this earlier structure. The fact that Cheil is a subsidiary of Samsung. Right. Sometimes an in-house agency or a subsidiary agency gets taken for granted, saying, what's the big deal? They're just in-house. We can ask them for anything. Yeah. How do you prevent this sort of taking for granted happening within Cheil?
I think we're very fortunate we get the best of both worlds, because we can see in the industry a sort of trend emerging where emerging sort of tech-based agencies are trying to get client-side inside, right? And there's a big kind of theme that's pressing into that space. But it's very uncomfortable for most of them because the cultures don't mix. Mm-hmm. And I think we're in the best of both worlds in that, mobile is in our DNA. We are really in a position with Samsung where we're inside the business in ways that other agencies aren't. And I think at the same time, we have that ability to transfer all of that way of working to other global clients like Adidas or MG or brands that we work with in many markets. And that means that we move faster for clients and in a more culturally relevant way, because we really understand how to draw from their business insights and partner with them around product development to get to more interesting places and spaces quicker. So for us, it's the best of both worlds, and we don't have any kind of restriction through it. We're actually liberated by it, and it's really exciting. And I think what happens in our creative industry is today we're seeing many creatives leave traditional agencies to go client side because they're seeing that this way of working is much more exciting and the opportunities, are much more relevant to what's going on today. So for us, it's as I say, it's a win-win situation.
Malcolm, let's talk about Cheil India. You've said in previous interviews that the Samsung Good Vibes campaign is something that you're particularly proud of. Tell us about how this campaign came together.
Yeah, so this is a step forward from what we do in many markets with Samsung, where we weave their technology into society in ways that helps and positively contributes. And I think, we've done this time and time again in different markets. I referenced earlier things like Be Fearless, which was global. We do things in Spain like Dyslexia Detective, which for free detects dyslexia in school kids through a gaming setup. And in this case, what we were doing here in India was actually making sure that Samsung's technology isn't a stunt, but it's something meaningful in society that for the first time globally unlocked the ability for deaf-blind to communicate with each other through the world's first interfaceless mobile app. And we worked, tirelessly over a year-long project with our clients and with the Morse code, Braille and blind communities to actually bring this app to fruition, and before moving it to a second stage, which actually didn't just unlock communication between the deaf and blind people, but also with the fully able people who may be their carers. And I think it's probably something that's underestimated in the world is, we say these words of deaf and blind people, but we don't really understand the predicament they're in. Communication, how is it possible to nourish?
Being deaf or blind for a day will paralyze most of us. We won't be able to survive a day.
Exactly. And I think that then inspired us to take a step further after that with a project called Talk, which unlocked the ability for ALS patients to be able to not just communicate through eye tracking, but also to control the environment through Internet of Things and connecting, say, light shades, lighting systems, cooling, heating systems, entertainment things, so that they could start to control their environment in a way that's comfortable for them if they're hot or cold or they want to watch something, without having to have this inordinate delay of communicating through a somewhat clunky mechanism, as sophisticated as eye tracking is, to someone, could you please change the temperature? Could you please do this? So this is, our ongoing kind of program that we're doing constantly. And I think Good Vibes was, certainly one of the best examples of how you can really use technology in ways that haven't been thought of to make life better for many people.
Is advertising still about the big idea? Or can you get away with a medium-sized idea with a lot of technology and a lot of words like big data and analytics?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Look, for me, big idea is it's a kind of phrase which feels a little bit belonging to traditional agencies. I mean, the reality is today things move at pace. Tactics are often more important. Tactical ideas, traditionally people would call small ideas. Many small ideas can be much more powerful than the wrong big idea in that sense. And the other side of it is consumers aren't waiting for a big idea. What I would say is that brands really need to know what they're about. What are they contributing to this world? Consumers ask that a lot more. And if a brand knows what it's about and its agency knows what it's about, you can create infinite tactical ideas that really excite consumers and engage them with the brand and add up to something much bigger. So the big idea, well, I'm not so sure that that's what the industry is all about.
Right, that's an interesting shift. Many small tactical ideas, not necessarily one big global idea that works in every single market. 5 years ago, we didn't hear the word influencer, and now they're everywhere. India, of course, is seeing an explosion of influencers.
Yes.
From where you sit, is this a boon or a bane, a curse, or something to be to contend with, or something that's desirable?
It is really nothing new. But I think what is new is that the authenticity of influencers is becoming awfully important. So, we're going through a maturity curve where it used to be rent a celebrity. I think we got to a point where oftentimes renting a celebrity did more for the celebrity than the brand. And so we got into what the industry started to talk about with micro-influencers. And we're actually going a step beyond that today, where we're going to emerging influencers. What's interesting, I think, about this is that when you get an influencer connected with a brand and there's genuine collaboration and it's authentic, we're starting to see new product development come out of it. That's where I think it's really interesting and really valuable. Now, that's a whole different stretch of the word influencer, because you might argue they're starting to influence the product development, perhaps more accurately contribute to it. But I think this isn't what used to happen, right? You used to see an endorsement and that was it. Now I think we're starting to see collaboration, and that's getting really interesting.
And if I was a celebrity watching this show right now, should I be a bit worried that my potential market is being taken away by these micro and emerging influencers?
Look, I think celebrity endorsement's always going to exist. I think there's just, between entertainment properties and big global celebrities, there's always going to be something that brings brands together with them. I think there's also models that exist that are born out of that connection, which is genuine. So when you've got a sports brand sponsoring athletes, obviously it's mutually beneficial. And to my point earlier, probably the first influencer collaboration that I can point to was Craig Johnson, the footballer from Liverpool, who developed the Predator boot with Adidas. You know, and I think this is where they've even moved further with their Parlay range and, you know, partner with Pharrell Williams and others to get at recyclable products in this space. Those things are super hot property and because consumers see they're authentic. On the other hand, lighter entertainment property endorsements for celebrities, partnerships with movies, franchise and the like, gaming worlds, they will always exist.
All right, Malcolm Poynton, let's end this interview on a personal note. You're a man of many different parts. You've been part of an Olympic team as a training partner in yachting. You're an aspiring architect, an art aficionado, technologist, a fan of the All Blacks, a fan of David Hockney, advertising man. Which of these roles do you enjoy the most?
Well, as passionate as I am about art and architecture and sport, nothing nourishes the soul like family. And I think, you know, there is something incredibly different and takes things to a different level. So really, family to me is paramount.
Malcolm Poynton, thank you for talking to us at Melt.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
That's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, it's @Suvenk on Twitter. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.